Welcome to the J3U University podcast. I'm your host, John Jewett.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Miller.
Our mission is to elevate the physique coaching standard
and deliver the highest level of competitors to the stage.
Let's jump into today's episode. Growing a business and a physique. A lot of us just start in bodybuilding because we just love working out and we end up competing at some point. But along the way, you're saying, gosh, how could I do this and make money? There must be a way to make some money in this bodybuilding lifting thing, and or what business might I align with it so I feel like I'm never working a day of my life? And this is what we're all after. Eventually, we're just doing jobs that revolve around our bodybuilding, and we don't take jobs that wouldn't be conducive. So the topic of the day is, how do you leverage bodybuilding into growing a business and growing a physique, and just things to consider if you are younger in this coming up, and how to get to a point like even where Luke and I are, or even if you're older in this and you're kind of considering what can you do in the physique world, in the business world, with your financial growth.
Yeah, I think just to start early, get in with people, run a business that you want to run and learn from them. I think that's probably where, even from my first coach, I was lucky enough and blessed that he would take me to national shows, show me how he ran his process. And then obviously when I started working with John, that went from coach client to mentor to, everything along those lines that allowed me to build my business, originally No Switch Fitness, and now everything that we do today. I think experience is invaluable and education is invaluable. Those two have to be married together though, and you have to get your hands in the dirt, right? And that's going to be both with your process and documenting your process, but also working with other people and following along other processes, so you learn from different challenges that come from other different physiques. So I started my business originally in 2016. I wasn't doing it full time until 2020. It's you got to start early and get rolling.
Yeah, I guess it's when are you coming into this determines kind of that path. It does, yeah. I was powerlifting since I was 16. So I've always been in some type of competitive aspect and what I loved. And so entering school, it was I eventually got into studying exercise science because that kind of was just, I could apply it to my training. Not necessarily, I didn't even have an idea what the job would be. Didn't matter at that point. But I think those are things to start to consider.
Yeah.
Is, if you're looking in your earlier on in a school setting and your bodybuilding, look to the people of who are doing these things that you would be interested in. What does that job look like? And then reverse engineer that process. Okay, well, to have that job, what requirements would be of me to have it, what education level and experience level, and start pulling that back to where your current moment is and the path that you need. And I think Luke mentioned, it's for a lot of these where they're more entrepreneur based, it's a hard spot to get in, and many of us don't jump right into that position either. And I think you need to realize that pursuing your passion won't always mean you're doing the thing that you love in every part of that journey. There's going to be moments where you're having to take jobs you absolutely don't want to do, and it's going to feel like you're not pursuing your passion, but it's just having to do the work to fund your life while you're having these other side hustles. And the side hustle can then at one point become your true job of passion that you love. But, reeling that back to starting in the school front in that earlier, younger age, I think it's absolutely the time to be investing in yourself education wise and experience wise. And I think some of my earlier mistakes were still trying to be at such a competitive level and chasing the physique down hard that I left a rate of improvement in the education front and the mentoring side on the table where I could have got a lot farther ahead. So I think if you are younger on, it's okay to sit out and not compete, grow your physique, but invest into the education side, the mentoring side, and go all in there. And then once that's established, because those are your investment years in yourself, then you're going to open yourself up to more opportunities to then have a better start point of leverage for a base job that can fund what you're doing. Because you come out with your exercise science degree and you're going to be, I don't know, I could have been like a physical education, like a PE coach or something, right? Like, and that nothing against that job, but it's just like, this is not a very high paying job that's conducive to bodybuilding. And so getting that, like in your mind, like, if, you have something else in school you're passionate about, like that, look at what that end job is going to be. And that's what people didn't tell me. They're like, just chase your passion. It's like, yeah, that's great, but it has to lead to some type of form of payment, right? But that's what I'd say. At least take the time, step away from stage, invest into your education and growing that piece, and try to start making that network. And now I was terrible at that, Luke. I think you're way better at that than me, because I am so like, do it on my own and keep to myself. And I'm shy. So like there was like mentorship opportunities with like the strength coaches, or like reaching out to these professionals to try to like shadow them, or just, build relationship with them, that I just didn't do. And so I think if you're finding people that they have the job that you want, like email them, reach out to them, try to go to wherever you can find them at and meet them. And, just make yourself annoying to, you're like, gosh, okay, fine. You can come volunteer and work for free. But eventually that could develop into something. So, establishing those is huge when you're earlier on, because people like us that are working in it, like it takes us back to seeing ourselves when we were fired up starting out. And it's absolutely fun to help someone that is that passionate about it. So at least that's my little piece around when you are in that school age front of like where your focus should be over chasing the physique.
Let me know if you agree or disagree with this or not, but also looking at what you're good at and what you're not good at to make that time leverage a little bit easier. Right? Because if you're really good at something, then you have to potentially invest less time in it to kind of be able to leverage that as a finance. Like for me, my original degree was a mechanical engineering degree, just because I was really good at conceptualizing math and 3D and doing all that. Right. And so for the longest time, my end goal with mechanical engineering was strictly to pay for the bodybuilding journey that I was going on. Right. At some point, and I think I told you this when I originally started with you, was I wanted to build my own gym or build my own business in this world using the funds I made from engineering, kind of as a product of getting into research and doing that in the biomedical engineering program. I saw that there was an avenue for using mechanics for human movement. And then that's where like I went back to grad school pretty quickly to do what I do now. And, the skills that were developed there were just a development of the skills that I was already good at, which was conceptualizing, motion in 3D and being able to apply that from a force perspective. That came easy to me. So I was able to monetize that. But then off the back end of that, that was a critical thinking skill I developed that I can now use today. Right. And so, God, there's something to be said about being self-aware enough at what you're good at to be able to then leverage that into the place where you're working in the industry. Because I coach a lot of people who are very passionate about it, but two that are here close to home in Dallas that have really renewed my, like, seeing how passionate they are, reminding me how passionate I was. And they're both like doing just that. They're using their skills in other aspects to be a part of the industry. Right. And so there's so many different ways you can do that. I think that's a big thing for the school age to be like, hey, what am I good at? Let's go develop that and be valuable so that when we do get into this post-grad degree life, you can actually leverage that into a position somewhere within the industry.
Yeah, I think there's so many avenues in school to go into areas where, whether it's, I think about like Jordan Shallows, like going the physical therapy route, and eventually, like while you're in school, you feel like this has no application to bodybuilding, but then you have this niche of area where you can work in. Or for me, I was excellent in science and like chemistry, and thinking back, like I probably would have gone to like pharmacy school. And for one, you can make good money in pharmacy school, like once you're a pharmacist. But hell, it would have leveraged in bodybuilding too at some point. But anyway, you have a great point. Like, what you're good at, like what's your standout subject. And then probably it's going to be some type of math science if you're getting into the bodybuilding world, most likely. Right. Yeah. And then seeing like just, trying different things, seeing different professions and seeing what excites you. And you can go down that route. Make sure you look up the profession, see what those end outcomes are for jobs, and like, are they even available? Do you have to move? Like, is that a state where it's conducive to your bodybuilding? Yeah, things to think about. But I absolutely agree. Like, you should be. It's okay to even do something that is not going to be related in the bodybuilding area. Like, I've met some people that bodybuild, they love it, but they absolutely have a completely different profession that's well established and well paying, but they're able to fully fund bodybuilding to the fullest. So it's okay to not go down that route and think, I guess I'll be a coach. Not everyone is cut out to be a coach, right? And a lot of times coaching will take away from your own bodybuilding too. So if you have a position that allows you to bodybuild to the fullest capacity, you absolutely could. And it's funny, it just came to mind, like Tim Budesheim, right? He's German open bodybuilder. I met him. He's an engineer, and he came over here to the States for like, I don't know, was he over here for 2-3 months? He's like, yeah, work will be there when I come back home. He's like, he's just camped out here, but he has the ability, because of his position, to come over here and live his bodybuilding lifestyle. That's phenomenal. So don't think you have to do something in the bodybuilding realm if you have some other type of interest, because you also do just have a short window of bodybuilding. So think about, after bodybuilding, like, this other career could carry you out and be something outside of just your obsession to have another skill set in. But I think along this too is like, once you're going through this school age piece, and like, my first job, I was a clinical dietitian. I worked in a hospital. It was fine. I was content with it, eventually to where I was, not that content with it. But it was just a means to work on my side hobby and hustle. So it was a grind, man. Like, it wasn't easy. Like, I had to work a ton of hours to get to where I was. So you just have to realize that this stuff is not going to be handed to you. And there's going to be lots of failures along the way. There's gonna be lots of moments where you're like, man, I'm not going to make this. Like, this is just not in the cards for me. I had times where I made the transition to doing part-time PRN dietitian work to like really expand my coaching business. And then, life happened and I needed more stability. So I ended up going back to full-time hospital work. And like, it's like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to grow this coaching business. Like, there's a big barrier to entry there. And so there was setbacks along the way. Like, there's moments where it feels like a failure, but all those failures and just keep moving forward is what continues to lead to success. So I want you to know, like, whatever you are pursuing, just get ready for that. And that's going to be part of it. And there'll be struggle in university, but that's what we all have to go through to eventually get to where our dream position would be. Even with J3U, like, it took a little over 2 years of Renee and I sorting through web designers, and we were the videography, editing team, marketing, sales team. We were trying to do it all, and just, it was a mess of just unsuccess. But eventually we get there, because you just keep grinding even through the failures, but failures are just really moments to learn from and gain opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. And I think something I wanted to pull out too, potentially, was you had mentioned potentially not competing if you're in the younger age. And that's always going to be, just from a time perspective, like the amount of time you can invest into growing a business is so much more in an all season setting than it is in a contest prep setting. And I think you've said this before. I think it was you, like, all season is the business building time. And then like contest prep is like the just keep it kind of rolling time, And there's so much truth to that, but I also think there is something to kind of understand if you do go the entrepreneurial route, like in your 20s, like, I forget who said this, but the 20s are your time. You can either grind in your 20s to be able to enjoy more space and free time in your 30s, or you can, enjoy your 20s and then work, hours and hours in your 30s and not have that, career or passion that you wanted it to be. And I think it's so true. Like, free time is not a concept when you're trying to build something from the ground up. And I think that's a very misunderstood aspect, especially if you're working a full-time job and growing it on the side. Like, there's not going to be much time for free time, which needs to be communicated as well to like supporting family members or people around you, because it does take a lot.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast. Are you struggling to hit your peak on show day? Feeling lost in the off season? Upgrade your coaching game with J3 University. Our program covers everything from off season to contest prep to peak week, all based from real client results. Along with our comprehensive physique curriculum, you'll also get access to our 4 rooms with our J3U team to answer any questions you have, and live Q&A sessions to further your coaching and athlete experience. We are the source of education for top IFBB pros and coaches. Join us to elevate the coaching standard at J3 University. Let's get back to today's podcast. I mean, I don't know about you. My normal entrepreneurial routine in the morning was to get up, have a cold shower, and I meditate for 30 minutes. Then I read my next motivational book for another 30 minutes. Then I go for some daylight exposure. And then 2 hours into my days, now I'm successful in my business. I don't know, posts like that, I just feel like are total BS. That is not what that looks like at all when you're trying to create a business. It is you get up and you hit the ground running all the way till bedtime. And there's all this fluff that's the flowery vision of what an entrepreneur life is that is not it. It is, I think Charlie posted something like this. I'm like, damn, that is so true. There's no meditation time or reading extra books in my free time. It was when I was trying to make J3U work, my coaching business and work on the side, dude, it was nonstop. I didn't have any extra free time available and time to myself. It wasn't the healthiest and there wasn't balance. But man, you're not going to make something like that fly if you're chasing this really balanced lifestyle. So
no, and it's not to just say it's impossible to do. It's just realizing the amount of input that has to be there. I would wake up, look for my laptop, see where that laptop is, go to Starbucks, get my coffee, sit there, work as soon as I get to Starbucks. That's pretty much every morning for me. If not, if my computer's dead, I grab the coffee, come back, and I'm working immediately, right? There's not that fluff time for routine. Now, I mean, there may be steps or something like that if I was in my bodybuilding years, right? But I think that the important thing to understand too is when you're building something like this, the networking, client retention piece and building relationships is huge for your development. Even clients that you lose or people that aren't a part of your business will speak positively to you, for you, and kind of send people your way. And I think that's where I think a lot of my skill set is not only on the education knowledge side, but I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people. I think there's a lot to be had with just showing up and being there and providing value. Even if you don't get value back immediately, at some point down the road, it will be. And just looking out for the investment in the development of humans and development of people typically always comes back in your favor.
You bring a good point up that comes to mind of your brand exposure, and don't think of your brand as oh yeah, when I start my business, I'm going to have whatever J3U, right? And then that's when I'm going to develop this brand. Your moment right now, you as an individual are your brand. So how you represent yourself, how you're treating others, all that is developing into the brand that people are seeing. And then at some point, maybe there's an association with an actual logo, and then that becomes the representation of you. And then that will expand beyond yourself as you bring people farther in. Just when you start bodybuilding and all you have is a physique or that information, for me, there's just this transparent sharing of just, hey, this is what I'm doing. And your just truth, your personality comes through, and you're not doing it to try to impress others. You're just being true to yourself. And I think that is the biggest piece. And when you're initially starting out as well. So when finally you do get to that brand, that brand encompasses your belief system, and you need to make sure that belief system is of good moral and ethical standing as well. So I'm not saying just put out who you are if you're not, you're not in the good moral standing, right? Some people might like it, I guess, but I think it goes a lot farther when to Luke's point of when, your main point is trying to help people and putting in the extra effort that you care and that you show up. I think those are great attributes to whatever business you're going to be going into, that this is someone I want to be involved with because of how much they're willing to put forth and care for an individual. So I think that there's a huge component to that. So start developing your brand, yourself, your imagery right now of what you're putting out. Because all that stuff gets collected now on the internet and can come back and bite you. To another point I wanted to bring up was, and mistakes that I made earlier were just forming partnerships earlier on. Yeah, I think our posing coach, Daniel Coffeen, he was excellent at this because he's a true, like, just hustle and work to make something successful. And, you're going to have to, for one, live below your means. So I think I think the most popular car driven by millionaires is like a Honda Civic or something, right? It's like a Honda. But what I mean is, like, to actually, you don't try to look like an entrepreneur before you are one. You need to really live below your means, and all that extra funds that you have is what you're going to be pouring in to bringing on people that have your strength, their strengths or your weaknesses, right? So like earlier on in J3U, like, I needed someone that had the strengths in marketing, sales, and brand development, and IT. I didn't have that. So I partnered with someone that could help me do that. And that's when my business, like, took off. Was that taking money out of my pocket? Absolutely. Absolutely. But even with Daniel, like, he's paying people to do content for him and help. He didn't have that skill set, and he was having to, like, just scrape by month to month with his own personal finances to make that business grow and succeed. Or bring someone like Luke in, who is that extrovert that can make connections and build community when you don't have that skill set. So partnering up with people earlier on and not trying to just wear many hats. There's going to be moments where that, I think it does have to start that way to a degree. But when you're able to reach out to people and do what you can within your means to start bringing it, like, that's when you can really expand and grow a business.
Yeah. And I think like telling your own story is a big part of it, but also telling the story of the people that you work with. I think Building a Story Brand is a book that, if you haven't read it and you're trying to build a business, you should have read it 3 months ago. So go buy it and read it, because it's resonating and talking to your audience, and the skills that you provide showing in real time, right? It's like all that proof, that real proof of client work that's creating, I'm missing the word right now, but building that story brand is so massive because people can then resonate. And whether it's your process or your client's process, it's a massive thing. If like coaching's your thing, or potentially even like if you're in the product side of the industry, like showing how many problems that product solves is a massive story to tell for people to see. So there's multiple different ways depending on the business model, but there's always a story to be told, and it has to be within brand development for sure.
Yeah, I think when you are able to establish some movement on that side too, like, you have your own things that you can pursue, at least if it's entrepreneurial work or your own career, but even leveraging within bodybuilding itself. And I think people are chasing down a pro card as a means to gain some type of financial grasp from that. That's not the reality for most people. And so don't chase that down. I would definitely be chasing down the career path, and then the bodybuilding and pro card is still on the side because I see people like throwing all their eggs in this basket of bodybuilding. And right now I'll tell you, like, the contracts and stuff are not what they used to be. And even what they used to be, that's a really just a handful of guys that were getting a livable amount from bodybuilding. And right now there's plenty of people that make a ton of money not even stepping on stage because they've leveraged their personal branding so well. Now, with that being said, within bodybuilding, it still comes down to the same things of growing a business, of like creating networks and relationships, because the people that you're meeting, like when you're meeting about companies or trying to get sponsorships and things like this, you want to be popping in someone's mind. So if you're at expos, like going and meeting these different people that actually manage the brands and athlete managers. And that's how a lot of these people get in the door. Cause I'll tell you right now, like for Animal, they'll ask me, "Hey, John, if you think of any athletes that might fit the brand well, let us know, like send them our way." So who are people that pop in my mind? Well, people that I follow, people that I have relationships with, people that I know on a personal level that I would trust to put with the brand. So it's developing relationships that gets me in. I don't just search around Instagram, think of like, oh, let me try to find this next great guy. No, it's like who already comes to my mind. So it's like trying to plant the seeds along with people and build networks is where you're going to help grow the physique aspect of income, if that's even a thing. Because for many, it might not be. But for some listening, that could be something you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's certainly more tangible, like actual business stuff that you would need to kind of develop along the way, right? But I don't think that's what this podcast is for. I think it's more kind of that initial building of the systems to start getting you moving forward. And then that's where you start pulling in people that can help you with the actual running of the business, right? Because if you don't know what it looks like to run a business, like there's a lot that needs to be learned on the back end for you to be able to do that.
There's that piece to it, like the start out. The last thing I wanted to mention is like on the physique side, and if you're getting older in this, of like when to know to call it. And I think that can be a tough one because it was, I remember it was Ed Koo. He started Iron Rebel, the clothing brand. He said like bodybuilding steals a young man's working years. And it absolutely can be all consuming to bodybuild from your like, usually this is mid 20s to like mid, maybe late 30s. Your most productive years also establishing yourself in a career. So if you're pursuing bodybuilding as in a career type setting, but you're not a career level bodybuilder, what are you going to be left with after you're 35, 38, and you're still working like an entry level job? How are you going to leverage that up and move up the career ranks now? So I think there's a point in this where you really need to say and take an honest evaluation. Like, hey, within 5 years of pursuing bodybuilding all out, like, do you notice your physique progressing past all your friends and people around you? Like, are you already about to step onto the pro stage? Like, do you have even room to move up the ladder in the pro ranks? Like, these are things you should be able to really start feeling out and thinking about. And if you're not, what are the other paths that you need to take here, and be okay stepping out and chasing down the thing that could really leverage up your life. And probably at some point, bodybuilding is coming to a spearhead where it's not going to bring greater self-development to you because your potential cap is a lot lower, or you've already sought it out, and something else is going to be. And so there's a self-development piece, but also just establish yourself in a career and not letting that pro card you're chasing down go on year after year and year. And then you're 20 years down the road chasing this pro card and you don't have much of a career to show for it. And I think that is a tough pill to swallow. It's a hard one to look at, step by, because we get so focused on trying to achieve this one goal that you have established for yourself. I think that's like, to Luke and I, some of our strong points, but also could be our weak points too, that we're pretty obsessive and unrelenting when it comes to certain things. However, if that's put into the wrong thing that is going to have that early cap on it, then we might just be hitting the wall for a long time before we're like, oh, duh. Why is my head gushing blood? Like, oh yeah, I should not be running into this wall anymore. So it's a hard one. It's a hard one to do. Like, hey, I need to transition out of bodybuilding competitively, or go more of a hobbyist front. Like, if you love it, cool, do it like in that capacity to a level that's not taken away from your ability to provide for yourself, your family, and actually retire someday. Because that's what we want to do. You want to be able to actually have money in the bank and retire.
Yeah, I don't know if I got much more to add to that. I think it's there's a lot that goes into building a business, and I think sometimes it truly is about right place, right time. But I do think there's a lot you can do to kind of help you be in the right place, right time, for sure, with some of the stuff we've touched on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it can be a hard struggle, but here we are doing it. At some point, Luke and myself, we're probably in your shoes right where you are. We're all there where we like just first day in the gym, here we are, or first day at college, and we don't know what the future holds. We're confused. We don't have the clear path yet. That's how it's going to feel. That's how it felt for me, at least speaking to myself. And you just have a unrelenting chase of some type of passion that you run into, and you don't quit, but you're also not ignorant and know how to pivot and use the people around you to help guide you that are wiser than you. Don't be stubborn. And through all that, you can wind up in a very good position with something that you really love to do. And if it's helps you leverage bodybuilding, just getting swole, awesome, as it should. But anyway, we put a little bit of this into Coaching Foundations, our module 1 in J3U, just kind of building the brand, managing that, how you let that, unveiling that to potential customers, and even have stuff in there about sponsorships. So there's more to J3U than just how do you gain muscle, lose body fat for on the stage. It's about also building your personal brand that's in there. But if you have questions around this and you're in J3U, you're welcome to ask us business stuff in the forum. And if not, throw it down on the comments. We can answer it there. But
absolutely.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.